So hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the Lake Villa Lindenhurst Round Lake Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm Jamie. I'm the director of the chamber, and I'm here with Dominic Marturano. I'm getting feedback here. Hold on one second. I'm getting feedback from the live.
Okay.
Okay. So Mayor Dominic is going to give us a update on the Village of Lindenhurst.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Chamber, for allowing me this opportunity to talk about what's going on in Lindenhurst. The Chamber has hosted these mayor's updates every year for as long as I've been on the board, if not longer. I've been on the board now for, it's almost 14 years. And so one of the meetings, the lunch meetings that the Chamber has, they will schedule that as a mayor's update. In the past, it was the mayors of Lindenhurst, Lake Villa, giving updates, as well as the township supervisor of Lake Villa Township, Dan Venturi. As both a trustee and a mayor, I've attended most, if not all, those meetings. So this is not new for me. It's great to give you an opportunity to hear what's going on. When we do it at a luncheon, we just get up and talk for a few minutes off of our notes. And so I am not going to bore you tonight with a huge PowerPoint presentation. I've just got a few notes, and we'll talk through kind of what happened in 2020, what is happening or I anticipate happening in 2021, and then hopefully allow some time for questions. So with that, again, Jamie and Chamber, thank you for this opportunity. I want to start out and talk a little bit about fiscal status of the village, financial status. And I'll step back and say, let's go over a little bit of Municipal Financials 101. Although my update for 2020 would be the calendar year, our fiscal calendar for the Village of Lindenhurst, like many towns, is not coincide with our calendar. Our fiscal year begins on May 1st and ends on April 30th. So I will be talking about two fiscal cycles when I talk about 2020. So May 1st, 2019 started our fiscal year 2020 and ended on April 30th. At a very high level, I will tell you that things went pretty smoothly from a financial perspective. Our revenues for our general fund were basically on target, or 100%. And some of those revenues that go to the general fund are property taxes and state income tax proceeds and sales tax, motor fuel tax. All those were pretty much what we expected. And we spent about 97% at the end of April in 2020 for the fiscal year. So we spent a little bit less than what we had budgeted. Auditors every year review our financials, and they reviewed our fiscal year 2020 financials and gave us basically what I would call a clean bill of health. There were no material weaknesses, no issues with either our processes or our controls to capture our financial transactions. So that's good news. And honestly, that's always been like that as long as I've been on the board, if not longer. I mentioned property taxes, and I know that's a sore subject, so let me take a quick little diversion. When people complain to me about why are their property taxes so high, usually my first response is, well, it's not only your property taxes, it's mine too. I'm a resident of the village, and I get no special dispensation for being an elected official. I have to pay the same property taxes that all of you do in the village. My wife and I, for comparison purposes, I paid over $12,000 last year, and I agree that's way too much. But in the case of when my wife wrote our check for our property taxes of $12,500, not all $12,500 went to the Village of Lindenhurst. People think that sometimes if there's a pothole in front of the road, why, with all their tax money, why isn't that pothole fixed? Well, again, all the money that you pay in property taxes does not go to the village. And actually, only about 3%, I know 3% of my bill comes to the village, and Quite frankly, even if you're in a different school district than me, your taxes would be relatively the same going to the village. It's about 3%. So whether you've seen pie charts from the village or segmented dollar bills, if you think about all the taxes we pay, all the property taxes, of every dollar you pay, only 3 pennies comes back to the village. 3. That means 97 pennies go elsewhere. First thing I tell people is make sure you understand what makes up your property tax bill. Look at those that you pay the most to and those you pay the least to. Those you pay the most to are going to be your schools. And so if you haven't talked to your schools, please do so. But more importantly, if you're concerned about your property taxes, what you really need to do is talk to your state elected officials. Your state representative and your state senator, you should know who they are, because it is up to our state legislators to rewrite the laws as how schools are funded. If they don't change the laws of how schools are funded, it will continue to be based on property taxes primarily, and that's why we pay so much. So hopefully you know who your state rep and state senator are. If you live in the northern part of town, your state rep would be State Rep Joyce Mason, and correspondingly, your state senator would be State Senator Melinda Bush. If you live in the southern portion of town, your state rep would be State Rep Tom Weber, and correspondingly, your state senator would be State Senator Craig Wilcox. If you don't know who they are, shame on you. You should know who they are. You should let them know how they need to change the law. Otherwise, our property taxes aren't going to change much. If I took the 3 pennies that I get from each of you and I shaved a little bit off that, if I cut some of our expenses, you wouldn't even notice it on your tax bill. It's really the schools, it's the larger taxing bodies that you need to focus on. So much for property taxes. Hopefully I didn't raise too many people's blood pressure with that. So again, we ended up fiscal year 20 in good shape. Fiscal year 2021, as of last night at our village board meeting, we had an opportunity to look at our financials through the month of December, which means we're 2/3 of the way through our fiscal year already. And I will tell you again, even though with COVID kind of shutting some things down, budget-wise and actual spending, we're doing very well. We also received from the county, initially funded through the federal government, our portion of COVID expenses that we could get reimbursed to us. So we finally got that through the county back in December, and we are taking some of that money and using it to help businesses. And I'll talk about our reimbursement program in a few minutes. Moving on from financials, I'm sure everyone was riveted by that. Completed projects in 2020. Road resurfacing. We resurfaced a number of roads I would call the worst of the worst. Back in 2019, we hired some consultants to come out and measure our roads, not just the top surface of the roads, but also the underlayers of our village streets. And they came back to us with a ton of useful data and information. There is an industry standard called the Pavement Condition Index Rating, or PCI, and most of our roads, as no surprise to any of us, were rated fair to poor. So our goal over the next several years is to spend more money on major street overhauls and try to get that PCI number back up to fair, if not better. So in last year, we spent $1.5 million to address a number of streets. And if I can quickly find my list here of the roads we hit Independence Boulevard, we hit Penn Boulevard, we hit Adams, Northgate, Meadow Arch Circle, Warbler Court, and Thrush Circle. Those were some of the worst from that PCI index. In comparison purposes, in 2019, we only spent about $800,000. So we almost doubled that in an attempt to try to get ahead of the condition of some of our roads. This is a big concern, a big priority for us. If you go on the village website, you'll see a map that's color-coded that the consultants did for us to kind of color code how bad some of the roads are in comparison. In this calendar year, we are not going to do major road work we're actually trying to save enough money so that in the next 3 fiscal cycles after this one, we can spend plenty of money in those 3 fiscal cycles to try to get those roads back up to good, if not better. So we'll continue to do the normal patching that you see, but the major road resurfacing will take a break this year just to accumulate and save some more money, and then use that in the next 3 years in a row. In the past, we always had enough money, only had enough money to do our major road work every other year. And we're trying to set more funding aside to do it every year, and to enable us to kind of get ahead of the curve on all these worst of the worst streets. Grand Avenue was completed last year, which is a big deal. Although this was not a village project, we obviously contributed to it for bike paths, sidewalks, and some relocation of sewer lines. But now the new Grand Avenue is in much better condition and is much safer around Lindenhurst Drive and other areas. Look forward to the state finding the money and starting Grand Avenue work, hopefully in the next year or two, moving west. So this work ended at Munn Road, and then the next chunk of road that the state will do will be from Munn all the way up to Deep Lake. And again, we'll pay for our portion of sidewalks and bike paths, and hopefully that road then in a few years will be much better to travel over as well. Lindenhurst Drive detention area. So the area around Lindenhurst Drive, Wood Lane, and Old Elm has been a sore spot for a number of years with flooding. We've tried to get this completed through federal funding. It was the most frustrating project I've ever been a part of. I had a full head of hair when I started, but through this project, the problem was we had to deal with the federal government and FEMA. We had to deal with the state government, and it was all coordinated through the county. If you include us, that's 4 units of government with differing priorities and shuffling of resources and people in and out. Good news is we finally completed the project. This will help flooding in that area around there. And actually, former engineer Wes Welch, when we first started looking at this project, said if we get this detention area in place, we would positively impact at least 80 to 90 homes in the area. So got that one done finally. That was a huge burden for us to have to deal with that for years. COVID, we did a number of things once we got more into this virus and the lockdowns that the state put on us this year. We delayed water and sewer rate increases a couple of months to help people out. We waived late payment fees on utility bills for a couple of months. Back in November, we allocated $85,000 from the payments we received through the county for our reimbursement. We offer that up to our local area restaurants for a reimbursement up to $5,000 for their expenses during this COVID period. To date, I think we've spent it we've awarded between $15,000 to $20,000 to some of those businesses, and other businesses have requested a allocation or a grant, and we're just waiting for them to submit the paperwork that would demonstrate the receipts, the expenses they had during that period of time that we could reimburse them for. We also, back in December, when we passed our property tax levy for the next tax year, we put in no increase at all for inflation. So we tried to hold the line on our portion of the property tax bills. I would hope that other taxing bodies could do the same. And then we also, earlier in the year, we completed a strategic plan. This was based on not only feedback from residents in the surveys that they filled out a couple of years ago, but we actually had some focus groups. We had, excuse me, a group of residents who had completed our Citizens Academy. They went through a number of presentations and provided feedback on what's important and what's not important to them in this village. We had some we called community stakeholders, some business owners, and people who are part of other taxing bodies, whether they be a school district, the library, the fire district, the park district, etc. We had our own employees participate in some sessions. And then finally, the village board got together last January and kind of went through all that information and helped to prioritize our priorities going forward. And we basically put those into 4 different categories: short-term routine, short-term complex, long-term routine, and long-term complex. All that information is available on the village website. I'm not going to go into detail as to what's in there. But we also, if you see any of our village board packets prior or after a village board meeting, you will notice that we comment on our strategic plan items and talk about how we're doing in each of those. Last thing we did in late 2019 and early 2020 is we consolidated the Lindenhurst Sanitary District. That it is and still is, unfortunately, a separate line item on your tax bill. It was a separate board that was recommended by the mayor and board, but actually appointed by the county to oversee the Lindenhurst Sanitary District, the sewer treatment plant on Grass Lake Road. What was strange about that relationship, I won't go into the details, is we, the village, Public Works, operates the sewer treatment plant. We have since it was built, yet there was a separate board that oversaw it. So working with State Rep Tom Weber, he wrote a bill to allow us to consolidate that. We eliminated some administrative expenses, but the vast majority of expenses that the sanitary district has as a taxing body is the debt that they, or the loan they took out when they increased the capacity of the sanitary sewer plant back in the mid 2010s. So I want to say 2013, 2014. We expanded that plant, and so we need to pay off that debt. So you'll see a small item again on your tax bill that still says Lindenhurst Sanitary District. It's it's one of the smallest line items on your tax bill. I think mine was $42 in property taxes last year. So our goal is to try to get that debt paid off, and then we will eliminate it. When we consolidated, we were hoping that we could eliminate that line, but the state of Illinois wouldn't allow us to do it. They said that the loans were given from the state to the sanitary district, and if we, the village, paid on behalf of the sanitary district, the state would actually find us in default and want all the money back at once. And so that just doesn't make sense to us. So we continue to have the sanitary district there as a separate entity, but it's now run by obviously staff in the village board. Last thing I want to cover in 2020 is personnel. Few additions, and I apologize to the departments if I missed anybody, but in Public Works, we hired Kevin Nadelhofer. Our police department, we hired Officer Tim Peterson. Officer Split who came to us from Antioch, was sworn in April. Officer Galarza, who came to us and had to go through the police academy, so he was a relatively newcomer, started in April. We had at least two retirements. Officer Sandy Rappy and Officer John Fisher retired. Retired Commander Tony Ficus came back to help us out part-time as we were going through personnel shortages with the retirement. So Tony has with his familiarity of the village and the police department and the policies and the procedures, has been very helpful, helping us out part-time. And last but not least, we lost Art Neubauer last year, and Art was our village treasurer for over 50 years. I mean, just think about that for a minute. Someone who served the village as our village treasurer, help us with investments. He was a staple here in the village hall. One of the greatest guys you would ever meet. Huge loss to family, friends, and we here at the village miss him very much. That's 2020. Now, real briefly, what's going on in 2021? First thing I'll talk about is our TIF feasibility study. TIF stands for Tax Increment Financing. And what we're looking to do is we've hired a firm called Tesca Associates to look to see if our downtown area or our Grand Avenue corridor would be eligible for a TIF district. A TIF district is something that many villages and communities use. Chicago has over 100 TIF districts. Lake Villa, if you follow the news, about 2 years ago, started a TIF district in their downtown area around Grand Avenue and Cedar Ave. Many villages around here do TIF districts. It's taking the increment, banking the increment of property taxes that would typically go out to other bodies. They would come to, in this case, the village, and then we would use that for financing improvements in that corridor. The focus being really on commercial. So what could we do with Linden Plaza if we had investment dollars? We could certainly help get the plaza fixed up. Maybe we could get the plaza owners to invest a lot of their own money to fix it up. Maybe we could incent a buyer to come in and buy the plaza. Maybe we can get new businesses in. Maybe we get the existing businesses to do some upgrades. All that would be through tax increment financing. There's a long process to follow, and there's criteria that has to be met for a TIF district to be established. That's why the village has hired these consultants. Hopefully by the summer, we'll know if it's feasible. I want to make sure before we go off and do this that the dollars that we will have available to us if a TIF district was enabled will be substantial enough to make a huge difference in our downtown area. A few $100s here and there is not going to help us out. It's got to be a lot more money than that. So they're helping putting all that together. They will work on public hearings. They will work with other taxing bodies to inform them of what's going on if the feasibility study comes back with some good news. So that's a big deal for us because one of the items in our strategic plan is to create a downtown area, improve a downtown area, create a downtown center. And so we need substantial dollars to do that. Another thing underway this year, it already started several months back, is Briargate. That is the age-restricted subdivision that's going up on Route 45 just south of Falling Waters. Age-restricted, they are looking, these will be single-family homes that they will sell to people over 55 years old. This is a niche in our village that we don't have. We have apartments for young people. We have small single-family homes. We have townhomes. We have Victory Lakes for senior assisted living and other healthcare related, but we don't have anything for people who want to become empty nesters, downgrade a little bit, but still stay in the village. So Briargate, similar communities have brought in some age restricted housing, and it's been really, it's gone over really well. So Briargate is going to be built in 3 phases, about a total of 228 homes. This first phase will be about 75. Hopefully, if you've driven down 45 and you've looked to the west, you see a new street behind Falling Waters, and you've probably seen a couple of model homes going up. Hopefully, they'll have those model homes in place for the spring, and then folks can kind of check out Briargate, different models if you're interested. Let's see, Casey's General Store, which is a gas station and a convenience store going up on the corners of Sand Lake Road and Route 45, so it'll be the southwest corner. The final plans, the architecture, landscaping, et cetera, were approved last night by the village board. So hopefully that construction will start sometime soon. I think they're still waiting on some okays from the state and the county on being able to get in and out of that corner. But that should be a welcome addition to our village. The village administrator and I have also had conversations with some developers on some additional development kind of right next to Briargate. Our initial feedback was that the developers wanted to put in some duplex homes and very little commercial. we wanted them to kind of go back to the drawing board and try to fit in a little bit more commercial and a little bit less residential in that area. So when you think about that area, that corridor on Route 45 between Grand and Sand Lake, that was the old Village Green property, and that was supposed to be a huge commercial development. And with the downturn of the economy back in the late 2000s, it was a good thing that they didn't start. But we've always seen that opportunity to use that land there as being a huge commercial base for us as Gurney continues to get built out and moves more and more commercial to the west. So we've asked them to go back to the drawing board. Hopefully they'll come back to us with some ideas soon. And then there's a developer who wants to put in some apartment buildings and some commercial out near Butera. So we've had some initial discussions. Initial plans looked rather interesting. So I think they're going to go back and do a little bit further design on that. What else is going on this year? We're going to do swearing in 2 new police officers tomorrow night. These are transfers from other towns. What's nice about the transfers from other towns is when they come in, they have to spend time with a field training officer, one of our own officers, but we don't have to send them through the police academy downstate, which is expensive, and it's a 12-week investment of our time and the officer's time. So we're getting an officer from Chicago PD and from Berwyn, and I will swear them in tomorrow, and that will help bring us back to, I believe, normal headcount in the police department. COVID, what's going on with COVID? Your guess is as good as mine. Again, there's some things we're going to do financially. We have decided that we are not going to increase water and sewer rates effective May 1st. Every year at the start of our fiscal year, ever since we've had Lake Michigan water, we've had an ordinance in place to automatically increase the water and sewer fees by 3%. That first year when we got Lake Michigan water in 2017, there was a huge jump in our water and sewer fees. And that hurt a lot. I mean, a lot of people felt the pain and heard about that for quite a while. So in 2018, we did not increase our water and sewer rates. We kept them the same as in 2017. In 2019, we did the same. We kept them the same. We did no increase. Last year, we went up 3%, but we delayed it because of COVID. This year, instead of going up 3%, we've already said we're going to stick with the rates that are there now for water and sewer. And hopefully that water and sewer account will continue to function okay. And again, it will help our residents and businesses not have to deal with incremental costs given COVID. We've also waived business license fees. So every year come April 30th and May 1st, we ask all our businesses to reapply for a business license. And with that, there's a fee. We're asking them to reapply, but there is no fee this year. And so that, again, will help our businesses out. When will we be back to normal? My crystal ball doesn't show anything concrete as to what's going to happen. Your guess is as good as mine. People ask, are we going to do concerts in the park? Some discussions have started on concerts in the park. We will probably sign the bands, and then we will just keep our fingers crossed that we'll be allowed to gather as groups this summer at our normal locations, either the band show at the Lindenhurst Park District, at Lehman Mansion in Lake Villa, or the Caboose Park at the Township Center. More to come on that, but I know some discussions have already started on that. Lindenfest will be there. Lindenfest, I have to follow up with the Lindenfest committee and get their ideas, but again, it's going to depend on where we at with the virus come this summer. Will they be willing to sign up the bands? Will they feel comfortable in having enough volunteers to run Lindenfest, because that's always been something that's been very important. Will people want to be out in the summertime? We'll have to see. The last thing, the Santa Parade, which we did just a few weeks ago, again, went over extremely well. I've heard nothing but compliments. We complimented our public works guys again last night for the job they did. I have a feeling that we've started a tradition that we probably didn't think through when we decided to do this a few weeks back. So my guess is more than likely we will do this again at the end of the year. We'll have a Santa parade. We'd like to keep it small. By keeping the parade small, we can go up and down almost all the streets in Lindenhurst. If we keep adding vehicles to the parade and make it a large parade, then we're limited to how many streets we can go up and down. So we'll see how we are doing in terms of COVID. We'll see I know how the kids will react. The kids will love it. I don't know if we'll get the same reaction at the end of 2021 that we did with the adults. The adults were extremely ecstatic to see us coming down their street because we've all been locked up for so long. Who knows what'll happen this year, depending on how long we're locked down. But I can tell you we're going to do it. The biggest fear I have and the biggest hurdle that we have to get up by for the Santa Parade is Mother Nature. We were blessed this year that both Friday and Saturday nights, think about the parade crew, we're outside, well, those of us on the float, including Santa, we're outside for 4+ hours each night. And the weather worked out well. The last 15 minutes of the parade Saturday night, we started getting a little mist, a little drizzle. Luckily, we were done. Santa does well on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, coming from the North Pole. But Santa coming to Lindenhurst and trying to be in a parade, if it was rain, Santa wouldn't do very well in the rain. And if there's a large snowstorm and we have to have snow plows out trying to keep the roads clear, that might also have a negative impact on our little parade. So if you can all cross your fingers and continue to pray for good weather as we get into December, hopefully we'll be able to have another Santa parade like we did this year. So that's kind of what's going on in Lindenhurst. Jamie, any questions?
I don't see any questions. I guess one of the questions that I have is I wanted to clarify, because I know taxes in Lindenhurst, as you said, is a sore subject with a lot of people, that this TIF district won't necessarily be increasing people's taxes, correct? It's just kind of like taking what we've already paid.
Yeah, what it does is it takes the increment. So at the time the TIF district is established, the dollars that typically go to all the taxing bodies, the schools, the park district, the fire district, those kind of get locked in. And they can get locked in for up to a 23-year period. So they continue to get their money. It's the increment that's derived from the increase in property values throughout that taxing area. It's those incremental dollars that then don't go out to those taxing bodies. They come to the village, and that's used to invest in however we want to invest it. Again, it's the emphasis is commercial. We want to do something from the corridor right now that we're talking about that we asked the consultants to look at was from basically Grand Ave and Sand Lake Road, maybe even a little bit before that, but all the way west to Deep Lake Road. It has to be a contiguous area, so it does include some homes. That doesn't mean we're taking people's homes. We have to have a contiguous area. Those property values will be included in the feasibility study, but we have to look at that entire area. And so we looked at area that was currently commercial, like Linden Plaza and others, but we also went out all the way out west because there is property there from Munn Road all the way out to Deep Lake Road that has been zoned commercial and could be used with the frontage right on Grand Avenue. It could be advantageous for someone who wants to put something commercially up in that area. So that's currently where we stand with it. But no, property taxes do not go up just because there's a TIF district.
Hold on.
I lost you,
Okay,
Jamie.
I have a couple. No, okay. You're good. I just forgot to unmute. I have a couple questions. Somebody, they're asking, are there any inquiries regarding the closed health club over on Route 45, the Lindenhurst, is it near Falling Waters over there?
Yeah, I haven't heard of anything recently. We had been in contact, we, the village, have been in contact with the agent who was trying to get that occupied or sold. We had, and they as well had reached out to other local healthcare organizations to see if they were interested. nothing came about there. At one point in time, when Briargate came to us to build, they had talked about in this age-restricted community, their initial plans had called for a clubhouse, which would be part of their second phase. But then when they heard that the Lake Forest Fitness Center was available, they said, well, boy, that's great. If someone buys that health center, we will just, work it out a deal and have our residents be able to use that. Well, of course, with no one there, nothing's happened. We've actually pitched to the developers of Briargate, why don't you buy the health and fitness center? And then that could be, used by not only the members of the Briargate community, but then the community in general. And to this date, they didn't want to go that route. They're still thinking of putting in a separate clubhouse for their residents. So, we'll see what happens. We'll continue to be in contact with the realtor, but nothing that I'm aware of recently.
Okay, and has there been any discussion about passing a local ordinance cupcake law as permitted by state law? Some local jurisdictions like Libertyville has passed them. I'm assuming they're talking about like your cottage kitchen law where you can make pastries and bakery stuff in your house to sell.
Interesting. We just had that discussion at our December 14th board meeting. It was our only board meeting in December, and we did talk about that. The board gave the okay for staff to move ahead and kind of recraft the ordinance that would allow those activities in the village. We said more and more people are doing it, especially during these tough times, and it's next to impossible to try to enforce. So if other communities are doing it, which some are, there's no sense for us not allowing it. So we should hopefully see soon an ordinance come in front of the village board that will vote and allow that.
Okay, and then lastly, microbrewery. I know there was some talk about previously about one coming to town. Is it still on the table, or what's going on with that?
No, nothing firm at this point. We've worked with the couple who wants to put in a microbrewery and a restaurant here in Lindenhurst. We've given them, we've actually paid for property evaluations on 2 different sites within the village, and they, for whatever reason, have not moved forward with either of those 2. We've also talked to those owners about other existing buildings, i.e. both Linden Plaza and the strip mall next to Walgreens on Route 45. There are 3 or 4 units in that strip mall, just really between Walgreens and Chance's. Not sure what's going on there. The owner said he would look into it. Our village administrator has tried to reach out to the owners recently to find out what's going on, and we haven't heard back. But we continue to try to ping those business owners every few months to kind of see where they're at. They've got a great idea, but nothing has moved. There was also a church for sale up on Grass Lake Road that I pointed out to our administrator to contact the owners and say, could you turn that church? It's already got a parking lot. It's, a nice location for that business. But I think the owners of the church were probably asking maybe a little bit too much for them. So nothing yet, but we continue to, try to reach out to the owners to try to get them to come to the village. We unfortunately, we have to do this on their timetable, not ours. If it was our timetable, it would have been a done deal. But some of these things are a lot of investment dollars, so people are going to take their time and make sure it's the right investment and the right time for them. So hopefully something soon.
Perfect. Okay, and then somebody's asking about clearing sidewalks near Milburn Middle School. I'm assuming it's not on the school property because that would be their responsibility. But they have kids walking to school and the sidewalks aren't cleared with the snow. So I'm assuming that would be Public Works or
the middle school on Milburn Road. If it's the middle school on Milburn Road, those sidewalks there, I don't know if that's Milburn Road's a county road, and I really don't see the county going out and shoveling those. No different than the new sidewalks that just were put up on Grass Lake Road between really the underpass just west of Heritage Trails, all the way out to Deep Lake Road in the high school. Sidewalks are there, but the county's not going to go out and shovel those in the winter. And unless a homeowner, it's in front of their home, they might shovel in front of their home. It's no different than the Milburn school that's in Heritage Trails. I mean, some of the residents shovel their sidewalks, some of them don't. Some there aren't sidewalks. There is the path within the subdivision. And again, the subdivision probably doesn't have the funds to pay someone to come and always keep those pathways clear.
Okay. So I don't see any more questions. But
Right.
what is the best way if somebody does have a question pop up in the future? What's the best way to get a hold of you or somebody at the village to get those questions answered?
Yeah, you could go to the village website and if you have a question, you can send an email to me, our village administrator, Clay Johnson. If there's something you need serviced around, let's say you have a street light out, there is an application on the website that you could go in and put in a request for service. And typically Public Works, or depending on who would need to be involved, we'll get back to you within a few days and tell you the priority of the item, whether we have to, some of the lights, if it's a street light issue, some of those lights are owned by the village. Some of those are owned by ComEd. So a ComEd light might take a little bit longer for ComEd to come out, but we will tell you that. So a couple different ways. Again, if you've got a service request, use the application on the village website. If you just have a question or clarification, you could certainly contact me via email. And if it's just a general question about kind of what's going on in the village, you can call and ask staff or the village administrator at any point in time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight, Mr. Dominic. And I look forward to a fabulous 2021. Hopefully we get things back to normal this year.
Yes, you and I both.
And thanks again. I hope everyone has a fabulous evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And once again, if you have any questions, I will post the link to the village's website in the comments, so everybody has access to that too.
Thank you again, Jamie.
No problem.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.